The Galactic Council chamber was built to look eternal. Endless rings of silver and glass, rising high above the star clouds. 1,000 alien leaders sat in perfect silence, watching the human delegation enter through the tall black doors. The sound of their steps echoed like thunder through the hall. For months, these talks were supposed to bring peace. They were supposed to end the long, cold tension between humanity and the rest of the galaxy. But tonight, something in the air was different. The silence felt too heavy, the lights too dim, and every alien felt something they couldn't name: fear. The 3 human envoys walked slowly to the center of the chamber, dressed in plain dark suits, not armor. Their faces carried no smile, no warmth, only calm. One of them, Commander Hale, raised his eyes and met the gaze of the council leader. A tall creature with silver scales and golden eyes. The alien tapped its claw against the table, impatient. "You come with no documents, no weapons, no demands," the alien leader hissed. "What are you here for?" Hale's voice was quiet, almost too quiet. To end this, a soft wave of whispers moved through the alien leaders. Some leaned toward each other, their voices sharp like knives. "End what?" the council leader growled. Hale's lips moved slightly. "This game!" The alien slammed its claw down, the sound echoing through the chamber. "You humans are weak. You hide behind treaties and old words." The alien leaned closer, its golden eyes shining like fire. "If you refuse our terms, your little world will burn." Hale didn't flinch. His silence made the alien take a step back without meaning to. The lights flickered for a second. A low hum rolled through the floor, as if something massive was waking up far away. Hale's second envoy, a woman named Sarah, tilted her head slightly. The corner of her mouth almost looked like a smile. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. The alien generals frowned, confused. One of them slammed the console on the table. "What signal is that?" Hale took a slow breath. "It's the sound of time running out." The council leader laughed loudly. "Empty threats," it said. "Your fleets are gone, your defenses broken. Your people silent." Hale looked up at the glowing ceiling, where the star map of the galaxy shimmered like a sea of light. "Silence does not mean defeat," he said slowly. "Sometimes silence means preparation." That sentence froze the entire chamber. The alien generals exchanged uneasy glances. A few turned to their communication links. Their screens showed nothing but static. The room grew colder, as if the stars themselves were holding their breath. One alien general slammed his claw on the table again. "We control the skies," he shouted. "We would see your ships coming." Sarah stepped forward, her voice like a whisper but sharper than any blade. "And no," she said, "you wouldn't. For years, the galaxy had believed humanity's fleets were destroyed after the First War. But the humans had learned. They had built in silence, hidden in the dark spaces where alien eyes never looked. They had waited, patient and quiet, until tonight. The council leader pointed a claw at the humans. "You're bluffing." Hale shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "We're returning." He raised a small device from his pocket and placed it on the center of the table. A soft blue light filled the chamber. Then the ceiling changed. The stars above the council map flickered, and thousands of red points appeared across the galaxy. Alien leaders jumped from their seats, panic spreading like fire. "What is this?" Someone shouted. "Those are human signatures," whispered another. The dots were everywhere, in empty sectors, asteroid fields, dead systems, like an invisible army suddenly breathing. The alien generals started shouting orders into their comlinks, but no one answered. Static roared through their channels. Their communication network was being jammed. "This is impossible!" a general screamed. Hale tilted his head. "You should have listened when we were quiet." The room shook as the hum grew louder, not from inside the chamber, but from orbit above the council world. One of the alien aides stumbled toward the window wall. His skin turned pale as he stared at the dark sky. "Ships," he whispered. "They're already here." The council leader rushed to the window. Outside, the night sky wasn't dark anymore. Dozens of human warships emerged from the shadows, black hulls absorbing the starlight, engines burning like silent suns. They had been here the whole time, hidden, waiting. Alien defense satellites were still blind, Still searching the wrong sectors, Hale turned slowly. "We came for peace," he said softly. "But peace is not built on chains," Sarah added, her voice cutting through the panic like a blade. "It's built on power." The council chamber exploded with noise. Some alien leaders demanded a retreat. Others screamed for immediate war, but it was already too late. A single human ship had taken orbit above the capital world. The rest of the fleet remained hidden in the outer rings like wolves circling prey. Hale watched the chaos with the same calm face he had walked in with. Then he looked at the council leader and said, "You thought we were gone." The alien leader's claws trembled. "What do you want?" it whispered. Hale stepped closer. "Not what you offered," he said. "What's coming is bigger than your control." For a second, no one spoke. The hum in the air grew deeper. Like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant, Hale placed his hand on the device. And the star map above them changed again. This time, it showed movement. Thousands of human ships aligning in perfect formation. The alien leader realized too late that peace talks had never been talks. They were the warning before the storm. Sarah turned and began to walk toward the door. Hale followed without looking back. Behind them, the chamber fell into chaos. Screens flashing red, sirens howling through the capital. The council leader stared out the window. The stars were no longer silent. They were filled with human shadows moving like a tide. It had all started with a quiet meeting. A few calm words and the sound of footsteps. But the galaxy would remember this night as the moment's silence ended. And war returned to the stars. The council world trembled beneath the weight of silence. The night sky was no longer empty. The black shapes of human warships hung like ghosts above the capital, their engines glowing with a quiet fury. Alarms screamed through the towers, flashing red lights across the city. For centuries, the council had mocked humanity. They believed the humans were weak, broken, forgotten. But now, the hunters had become the ones being watched. And every alien leader felt that truth in their bones. Inside the council chamber, chaos had spread like fire. Generals shouted over each other, aides ran between consoles, and security forces stormed in with their weapons drawn. The council leader stood frozen near the massive window wall, staring at the dark shapes in orbit. "They're not supposed to be here," it whispered. Commander Hale and Sarah stood near the entrance, their faces calm, as if nothing outside mattered. That calmness was what scared everyone the most. It was the calm before something much worse. "Open a channel to their fleet," the council leader shouted. "Now!" A comms officer pressed her claws against the glowing panel. Static filled the room. She tried again, but there was only silence. "They're not responding," she whispered, her voice shaking. Hale tilted his head slightly. "We will speak when we decide," he said quietly. The words cut through the noise like a blade. One alien general turned sharply toward him. "You've surrounded our planet," the general growled. "What do you think you're doing?" Sarah stepped forward, her voice like still water. "We didn't surround it," she said. "We've always been here." The general slammed the table with his claw. "Lies." But the trembling in his voice betrayed him. They had spent years tracking human movement, years thinking they were gone. It never occurred to them that the humans had simply stopped letting themselves be found. Hale took a step closer. "Peace was never your goal," he said. "You offered chains and called them treaties." The council leader turned sharply. "And what is this then?" It shouted, pointing at the window. "Is this peace?" Hale looked at the warships outside and whispered, "This is the answer you earned." Above the planet, the largest of the human warships drifted silently. Its hull stretched across the stars like a black storm. It was not like the council's ships, which shined with gold and light. It absorbed light, swallowing it whole. A message suddenly flashed across the council's main screen. It wasn't sent through their normal networks. It bypassed every firewall, every defense. It was just one line, written in plain white text on a black background. "We were never weak." The chamber fell into complete silence. No one moved, no one spoke. The message repeated on every screen in the city, from military bases to marketplaces. The people of the capital world ran outside, pointing at the ships that had appeared from nothing. Panic spread through the streets like smoke through air. In the chamber, a young alien officer turned pale. "They've broken through every defense channel," he whispered. "They're inside our systems." Sarah looked at him with eyes as cold as the void. "We've been inside for years." The council leader gritted its sharp teeth. "If you attack this world, you'll be declaring war on the entire galaxy." Hale didn't blink. "War was declared a long time ago," he said. His voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of centuries. "You just never heard it." The alien generals exchanged nervous glances. One whispered, "They can't win against the entire council." Another whispered back, "They already did." Outside, the human warships began to move, slowly rotating into new positions. The council's defense systems tried to lock onto them, but their screens went black. All targeting software had failed. The humans had jammed everything. A single human voice filled the room, not through speakers, but through every device. "Every ship, every station. We gave you silence," it said. "We gave you a chance." The voice echoed through the chamber like the wind through a graveyard. Hale and Sarah stood still, their eyes fixed on the alien leaders. The council leader slammed its claw against the table. "Then what do you want?" It roared. Hale raised his eyes, and for the first time, the mask of calm cracked just enough to show something sharp beneath it. "We want you to remember," he said. The council leader took a step back. "Remember what?" Sarah answered, her voice like cold steel. "What happens when you push humanity too far?" A shiver ran through the room. It was not just a threat, it was a promise in orbit. The lead human ship opened its hangars. Thousands of smaller craft poured out like black arrows, cutting through the night. The alien generals screamed for their fleets to launch, but their ships remained still, locked by an invisible force. "They've taken control of our fleet network," an officer shouted. "We can't even move our ships." Panic roared through the chamber. The council leader grabbed the edge of the table, its claws digging into the metal. "You can't control everything," it hissed. Sarah turned toward him slowly. "We already do." On the streets below, alien citizens fell to their knees, watching the human fleet cover the sky. Every tower, every defense shield, every weapon system was already useless. Hale's voice remained steady. "You wanted humanity to kneel," he said. "Now you understand why we don't." The council leader tried to speak, but the words choked in its throat. For centuries, the galaxy had told itself the same story, that humans were gone, too broken to return. That story had just died in one night. A massive shadow passed across the chamber windows as the human flagship lowered its orbit. The city lights dimmed beneath its shadow. Then another message appeared on the screen. "Stand down or be forgotten." The council leader turned to Hale with wide eyes. "You would destroy us all." Hale shook his head slowly. "No," he said, "we don't need to." Outside, the human ships didn't fire a single shot. They didn't need to. The entire council world was already on its knees without a single blast. Sarah took a deep breath, as if the long silence of years had finally broken. She looked around the chamber, at the panic, at the fear, and then at Hale. "They never understood," she whispered. Hale nodded. "They will now." The council leader collapsed into its chair, the sound of its own heart pounding in its ears. "Why now?" It whispered, "Why reveal this now?" Hale stepped closer, the shadows of the fleet behind him like an army of ghosts. "Because peace isn't built on chains," he said. "And this time we decide the terms outside." The fleet stretched across the stars like a living storm. No shot had been fired, but the war had already begun in the minds of everyone who saw it. The galaxy would never be the same again. The night sky over the council world would no longer belong to them. It belonged to the silence that humanity had mastered, and to the power that had returned from the dark. The human fleet hung in the black sky like a storm, frozen in time, silent and still. It watched over the council world like a predator circling its prey. The city below was drowned in darkness, its defense systems silent, its fleets locked in orbit with no control. The once powerful Galactic Council had built its empire on fear. But tonight that fear had turned back on them. The silence was not empty. It carried weight. It carried power. Inside the council chamber, the alien leaders looked like trapped animals. Their voices were broken whispers now, not shouts. Commander Hale stood near the window. His hands behind his back. Sarah was next to him, calm as if she was watching a play she already knew the ending of. "They're waiting," she whispered. Hale nodded. His eyes didn't leave the sky. "They always wait," he replied softly. The council leader stood at the center of the room, its scales glistening under the dim lights, fear crawling beneath its calm mask. "If you wanted to attack," it finally said, "you would have done it by now." Hale turned his head slowly. "We don't need to attack," he said. A nervous general stepped forward, claws shaking. "What is it you want from us?" he asked. "Surrender, control, territory." Sarah tilted her head slightly. "You still don't understand," she said. Her voice was soft, but it cut deeper than any blade. The aliens had grown used to ruling, to making demands, to deciding who lived and who knelt. But humanity was not asking. Humanity was reminding them, reminding the galaxy of a mistake they had made a long time ago. The chamber lights flickered again. A low hum filled the air. It was different this time, deeper, heavier. An officer rushed to a panel and screamed, "Something's happening in the outer systems." A large holographic map appeared in the air. Thousands of red dots began to move. "More ships," the officer whispered. "They're everywhere." The aliens stared at the map in disbelief. Those red dots were not just fleets. They were formation lines, clean and precise. It was the kind of strategy no scattered world could build overnight. Humanity had been planning this for decades, maybe longer. The council leader slammed its claw on the table. "This is madness," it shouted. "You'll bring war to the entire galaxy." Hale slowly walked to the center of the room, his boots echoing on the marble floor. "There was already a war," he said. "You just didn't hear it." Sarah stepped closer to the hologram, her eyes following the red lines like a hunter tracing prey. "You should have listened when the stars went quiet," she added. A young alien aide ran toward the council leader, holding a shaking datapad. "Sir, messages are flooding in from other systems," he gasped. "Outposts are reporting human fleets appearing near their borders." The room filled with frightened whispers. The council had ruled for centuries without being challenged. Their power had never been questioned. But now, every star system they controlled was staring down a shadow fleet, and none of their defenses worked. The leader grabbed the aide by the arm. "Where are our fleets?" it demanded. The aide shook his head. "They're trapped, sir. We can't override the locks." Hale didn't need to smile. His silence was enough. The aliens had mocked humans for being too emotional, too unpredictable. But now their own fear was painting every wall of this chamber. One of the generals suddenly shouted, "We can still call reinforcements from the outer ring. They're too far for the humans to—" His voice died before he finished. A massive explosion of light flashed on the map. The outer ring defenses were gone in an instant. Sarah looked at the map without blinking. "They already knew you'd say that," she whispered. They were waiting. A cold realization spread through the chamber. This was not a sudden show of power. It was a trap set years ago, carefully designed, one thread at a time. The humans had waited for the day the council would be comfortable, lazy and blind, and that day had come. The council leader staggered back. You've been watching us," it whispered. Hale met its eyes. "Every step," he said. "Every law you passed, every fleet you moved, every word you spoke, outside the chamber." The sky darkened further as more human ships entered orbit. Their formation tightened like a fist, closing slowly. "They're surrounding the capital," a general shouted. "We can't even raise our shields." Hale walked back to the window. "Shields only work," he said, "if someone is afraid of being hit." The aliens froze. His voice was soft, but the meaning was heavy. Humanity wasn't threatening them with destruction. Humanity was showing them they didn't even need to fight to win. Suddenly, the chamber doors opened. A figure walked in, dressed in a long black coat with the symbol of Earth etched in silver. It was Admiral Kalen, the commander of the Silent Fleet. Every alien in the room stared at him like he was a shadow made real. He didn't speak at first. He just looked at the council leader. His presence filled the room like thunder. Sarah bowed her head slightly. "Admiral," she said. Hale stepped aside, letting him walk forward. The council leader clenched its jaw. "Is this it then?" It said, "You will destroy us and take our place." Kalen stopped in the center of the room. His voice was low but carried through every wall. "No," he said, "we don't want your throne." He leaned closer. "We want you to remember who you're speaking to." The leader's throat tightened. It tried to speak, but no words came. The weight of history was pressing down on everyone in the room. One of the generals took a shaky step forward. "If you strike now, the entire galaxy will unite against you." Kalen turned to him with cold eyes. "Then the galaxy should have thought of that before," he said. The general stepped back without another word. No one in this room had ever seen humans speak this way. Not with rage, not with arrogance, but with quiet certainty, like people who didn't need permission anymore. Kalen raised his hand slightly, and a new image appeared on the holographic map. It wasn't just ships anymore, it was colonies, hidden stations. Black sites across space, thousands of them, all built in silence while the council looked away. "You thought we disappeared," Kalen said. "We were building a new kind of war." The leader's claws dug into the table. "You can't control the galaxy," it growled. Kalen's gaze didn't waver. "We don't have to," he said. "We only have to control the moment." A sudden tremor shook the ground. The largest human flagship slowly turned its bow toward the Capitol Tower. Its engines roared like the heartbeat of a beast. It didn't fire, it didn't need to. The message was already clear. The council's rule was no longer unquestioned. The chamber fell silent again. Only the sound of distant engines rumbling through the walls. Hale whispered, "The silence is over." Sarah nodded. "The storm begins." The council leader looked around at its generals and officers. Once proud, now pale and shaking, they had spent centuries thinking they ruled the stars. But now the stars belonged to someone else. The shadows they ignored had returned, stronger than ever. Kalen turned and walked toward the door. His footsteps echoed like gunfire in the quiet room. "You wanted peace," he said without looking back. "But you forgot who you were trying to chain." The last thing the alien leader saw as he left was the fleet outside tightening its grip. Like a storm cloud ready to break, the galaxy they knew was gone, and in its place stood the silence that humanity had forged into a weapon. The kind of silence that didn't ask for mercy, it commanded it. The city of the council capital was drowning in shadows. The glowing towers that once shined like stars now stood dim, as if the sky itself was holding its breath. Above it all, the human fleet remained motionless, their black hulls glimmering faint red from the distant sun. It was not the kind of silence that came with peace. It was the kind that warned of something waiting to strike. Inside the council chamber, the air was thick with tension. Generals whispered in tight circles, their claws tapping the table. Officers ran from console to console, trying to unlock control over their own defense systems. Nothing worked. Every shield, every cannon, every ship had been silently taken over. Commander Hale and Sarah stood near the massive window. Their eyes locked on the sky. They didn't need to speak. The entire room already knew who held power now. The council leader rose slowly from its seat. Its golden eyes burned with anger. "You're playing a dangerous game," it growled. Whale finally turned his head. "We're not playing," he said quietly. "You are." The words landed like a strike, making the leader stiffen. "You came here claiming you wanted peace," the leader said, its voice rising. "And yet you choke our world with your ships." Hale didn't blink. "We offered peace," he said. "You mistook it for weakness." One of the alien generals slammed its claw on the table. "Why now?" it shouted. "You could have struck years ago." Sarah stepped forward, her voice cold but controlled. "Because silence is power," she said. "Because when you forget, the enemy is watching. That's when the knife is already at your throat." The chamber fell silent again. Even the officers who were tapping on consoles stopped. Listening to her words, suddenly the lights flickered. A massive holographic screen blinked to life in the center of the chamber. An image appeared, thousands of human ships. But these weren't the ones orbiting above. These were deeper in the galaxy, hidden in distant systems, all moving in perfect formation. "This isn't the whole fleet," whispered one of the aides, his hands shaking. "No," Hale said softly. "It's only the beginning." A loud alarm blared across the chamber. A security officer screamed from the side. "We've lost connection with 3 border sectors." The council leader turned sharply. "What do you mean, lost?" The officer's voice cracked. "Their systems have gone dark. No signals, no defense." "Nothing?" Sarah narrowed her eyes. "They're waking up," she whispered. The alien general stared at her in confusion. "Waking up?" Hale looked at them slowly. "We built in silence, and now that silence moves, panic began to ripple through the room. Generals barked orders, trying to re-establish control over fleets. But the systems ignored their commands. "They've cut us out," a young officer shouted. "Our fleets won't respond to any override." The council leader gritted its teeth. "This is an act of war," it said. Hale's calm expression didn't change. "No," he replied. "This is an answer." The chamber doors opened with a heavy hiss. Admiral Kalen walked in, his long black coat trailing behind him like a shadow. The room fell completely silent. Even the most powerful generals stepped back. His voice was low but steady. "You still think you have choices," he said. "You don't." The council leader glared at him. "Then what is it you want?" Kalen walked to the center of the room. "We want what you never gave us," he said. "A voice." A general shouted. "You can't force the galaxy to obey you." Kalen turned to him, his cold eyes sharp as a blade. "We don't need them to obey," he said. "We need them to remember who they provoked." His words sent a chill down the room. He tapped a small device in his hand, and a second hologram appeared. Images of council invasions. Human colonies burned, cities falling, children hiding in ruined shelters. Sarah looked away for a second, remembering every silent year they spent rebuilding. Hale didn't look away. He had carried those images for too long. "You did this," Kalen said quietly. "You built your empire on our pain." The council leader clenched its claws. "Those wars were centuries ago," it hissed. Kalen stepped closer. "And silence is patient," he said. "We never forgot." The leader tried to hold its ground, but the weight of his voice made the room feel smaller. "You want war," the leader said. "You'll have it." Hale shook his head. "No," he said softly. "War is already here, and you're the ones who started it outside." The human fleet shifted its formation. Thousands of smaller ships spread out, cutting through the thin atmosphere like blades. The alien officers screamed into comms, trying to call their fleets, but nothing answered. Kalen lifted his gaze to the window. "For years," he said, "you watched us disappear. You thought that was victory, but silence was the forge." The fleet above the capital began to pulse with light, a signal wave moving through their lines like a heartbeat. The council leader shouted, "If you destroy this world, the other races will rise against you." Hale finally stepped closer, his voice quiet but firm. "They'll remember they feared us first." That sentence silenced the leader completely. Around them, every alien in the chamber could feel the weight of something far greater than just fleets. It wasn't just a military force. It was the return of a storm the galaxy had chosen to forget. One of the generals whispered, "There must be something they want." The leader turned to Hale. "Then tell us," it said. "Tell us your price." Hale looked at Kalen. Kalen didn't speak, but Hale's voice carried the message. "We don't want your worlds," he said. "We don't want your resources." He leaned closer. "We want the galaxy to understand something. Humanity doesn't kneel." The leader's claws tightened against the table. The screen still showed thousands of ships moving like a black tide across the galaxy. There was no army in history that could face this without fear. "And if we refuse?" the leader asked. Kalen tilted his head. "Then history will remember this night as the night the council fell," he said calmly. A sudden sound shook the chamber outside. The largest human flagship slowly rotated, its cannons aligning with the Capitol Tower. They didn't fire, but the threat was enough to freeze everyone in the room. Sarah stepped closer to the leader, her voice like ice. "We don't bluff," she said. "We don't warn twice." The council leader looked at the other generals, but none of them met its gaze. For the first time in centuries, they were not the ones giving orders. They were the ones waiting for mercy. The leader's voice broke slightly. "What happens now?" Hale turned toward the window, watching the fleet. "Now," he said, "the galaxy learns what silence really meant." Kalen walked out of the chamber with slow, steady steps. Hale and Sarah followed behind him. The alien leaders remained in their seats, crushed by the weight of their own fear. Outside, the human fleet glimmered like a sleeping beast ready to strike. No shot had been fired yet, but the war was already written in the stars. The silence that once made the council feel safe now belonged to humanity, and they had turned it into their sharpest weapon. The fleet above the council capital moved like a shadowed tide. The black warships hung in the sky without sound, their sharp silhouettes cutting through the pale light of the system's sun. Every street below was silent. Every alien who once walked with pride now stared at the sky with wide eyes. No one spoke because everyone understood this was no bluff. Humanity had returned, and the galaxy's balance had shifted. Inside the council chamber, the air felt colder than before. The alien generals had lost their voices, their arrogance replaced with a quiet fear they didn't know how to hide. The council leader stood at the head of the long silver table, its claws gripping the edge as if holding on to the last piece of power. "This is your moment, human," it growled softly. "But you can't hold the galaxy forever." Commander Hale stood near the massive glass wall, his eyes on the fleet above. His voice was quiet, steady, and dangerous. "We don't need forever," he said. "We only need now." Admiral Kalen entered the room, followed by Sarah. The sound of his boots echoed like a slow drumbeat through the hall. He didn't speak at first. He simply looked at the alien leaders one by one, letting the silence press on them like a weight. Finally, Kalen spoke. "You've built an empire on the belief that humanity was gone," he said. "But your empire was built on a lie." One of the alien generals finally snapped. "You think this show of force will make us kneel?" It shouted, "The galaxy will unite against you." Kalen turned to face him, his voice calm and cutting. "The galaxy was already united against us," he said. "And still, here we are." The general stepped back without another word, because in that moment, everyone in the room knew it was true. Humanity had survived everything they had thrown at it. They had waited, hidden, built in silence, and struck at the perfect time. A new signal flickered across the main screen. It wasn't human this time. It came from the outer colonies of the council. The image of an alien governor filled the display. Her voice was shaking. We can't hold them," she stammered. "The human fleets are everywhere. They control the jump gates, the defense grid, everything." The council leader stepped forward. "Regroup your forces." It barked, but the governor's eyes filled with hopelessness. "There are no forces," she whispered. "They took them before we even knew." The screen went dark. The room fell into complete silence. One of the alien aides collapsed into his chair, whispering to himself. They were always watching. Hale's cold gaze moved to the leader. "You built your walls high," he said, "but we dug under them." The leader slammed its claw on the table, sparks flying. "What do you want?" It shouted, "What is the end of this?" Kalen slowly stepped forward, the air around him feeling heavier with every step. "The end of this," he said, "is the end of your illusion." Sarah crossed her arms, her voice sharp. "You ruled with fear," she said. "We answer with silence." Outside, the massive flagship began to descend slowly, its engines glowing like a burning star. It cast a shadow across the entire capital city. The alien generals ran to the window, their faces pale. "It's entering the atmosphere," one of them gasped. "Why would they bring it this close?" Hale's voice was like iron. "Because we can." An alarm blared through the chamber. Security officers shouted from their consoles. "They're overriding the planetary shield." Sarah tilted her head slightly. "Correction," she said softly. "We already did." The leader looked around the room, realizing with slow, sinking terror that every system they once controlled had already been stripped from them. They were rulers only in name now. Their power had been taken without a single shot. Galen stood before the table, facing the council leader directly. His voice lowered to a cold whisper. "Do you know why we waited so long?" The leader stared at him, not answering. Galen leaned closer. "Because silence is not weakness," he said. "It's patience. It's knowing exactly when the world will stop listening to its own lies." The leader's golden eyes hardened. "And when this war ends," it asked, "do you plan to rule the galaxy? To become the same thing you claim to hate?" Galen gave a slight, humorless smile. "No," he said. "We don't want your throne. We want something far more permanent." The leader's voice shook. "What?" Hale finally turned from the window, his voice like a blade. "A galaxy," he said, "that never underestimates humanity again." A wave of bright red lights spread across the holographic map, one after another, systems falling into silence. Communication lines cut, defense fleets frozen in orbit. It was not a battle. It was an execution of control. Everything had been planned long before the council even realized there was a game being played. Sarah spoke softly, almost like a whisper. "You thought the war was tomorrow," she said. "But it ended years ago." One of the generals fell to his knees, staring at the floor. "We can't win," he whispered. Another turned to the leader with wide, frightened eyes. "If we resist, they'll crush us." The leader clenched its jaw, its claws digging into the table. "If we kneel, the council dies." Hale walked closer, his steps slow, controlled. "No," he said, "if you kneel, you live." The flagship outside stopped its descent, hovering just above the highest spire of the capital. Its massive cannons rotated, aligning with the city's central tower. It didn't fire, but the meaning was clear. Sarah looked at the council leader. "The choice isn't between war and peace," she said. "It's between being remembered or being erased." The council leader stared at the window, at the giant ship that blotted out the stars. For centuries, their empire had ruled through fear. Now they were the ones being forced to look into its face. Slowly its shoulders fell, its claws loosened on the table, and its voice came out quieter than ever. "What happens to the council?" it asked. Galen stood tall. "The council ends tonight," he said. "But your worlds live." A long silence filled the chamber. The alien generals didn't move, didn't speak. The leader lowered its head and whispered, "Then we surrender." Hale didn't smile. There was no celebration, just the weight of a war that had been decided long before this night. Outside, the human flagship dimmed its weapons. The ships in orbit shifted into new formations. No shot had been fired, yet an empire had fallen. Galen turned and walked out of the chamber. Sarah followed. Hale gave one last look at the trembling alien leaders. "Remember this night," he said softly. The night silence spoke louder than your entire army. The great doors closed behind them, leaving the council to its broken throne. Outside, the shadow of the fleet stretched across the stars. Humanity had not just returned, they had rewritten the rules. And for the first time in centuries, the galaxy listened in silence.